Hello, my name is Nia. 17 years ago, I got hit by a car, and while I lay there bleeding in the street, my mother stood on the sidewalk, pulled her cap down, and walked away. She saw me, and she left. Now she says she wants peace. But what she really wants is my signature. Proof she was a good mother. She's already erased me from family photos, told neighbors I'm unstable, and faked fainting outside my office. And yet somehow she still believes I'm the problem. Would you sign a lie just to keep the peace? Because I didn't. And 5 minutes later, the police showed up. So tell me, what would you do if the person who hurt you the most called it love? It hit me before I saw it. Just the sound. Tires screaming on asphalt. The shrill panic of a horn. That dreadful second of silence when every muscle in your body tenses as if it's bracing for an impact you can't see. I wasn't in danger, not really. I was just crossing Madison and 5th, same as I had every Tuesday for the past 4 years. But my body, it remembered. A white sedan came to a screeching halt halfway through the crosswalk. The driver threw up his hands, mouthing something I didn't need to hear to understand. I stepped back, nodded, waved him through like I hadn't just relived the worst day of my life in under 3 seconds. It's been 17 years, but the sound still makes my bones freeze. I turned the corner and kept walking, my fingers curling around the strap of my tote bag until my knuckles paled. The past has a funny way of following you, not in grand, dramatic leaps, but in tiny, ordinary echoes. A sound, a smell, a stupid, screeching tire. I crossed under the shade of a jacaranda tree and let the memory in. I didn't invite it, but it was already there, clawing its way forward like it had been waiting for a gap in my day. I was 14. It was spring, and the air smelled like wet concrete and fresh-cut grass. I remember that because I was walking home from school, heavy with textbooks I wouldn't need after that day. My backpack thudded against my spine with each step. The light turned green, and I stepped off the curb like I'd done 1,000 times before. I didn't hear the car coming until it was too late. Just a shriek, rubber against pavement, and the crushing force that knocked the world sideways. They say your life flashes before your eyes. That's not what happened. What I saw was my mother. Corinne Lawley stood on the sidewalk, 20, maybe 25 feet away, close enough to see the panic, or the guilt, or even love. But I didn't see any of that. She didn't scream, didn't run. Her eyes locked on mine, 3 seconds, I counted, and then she looked away, tucked her chin, pulled the brim of her cap down like she was trying to disappear, and she walked off. No rush, no glance back. I laid there on the asphalt, leg twisted the wrong way, blood slipping into my eyelashes. I remember blinking furiously, trying to clear my vision because I thought maybe, just maybe, I saw wrong. Maybe she didn't see me. Maybe the sun hit her eyes. Maybe she was going to find help. But she never came back. Paramedics arrived 5 minutes later, but those 3 seconds, those 3 eternal seconds, burned deeper than any broken bone. I blacked out before they got me into the ambulance. When I woke up, the room was a shade too white, too clean, too still. My mouth was dry, and my leg was screaming. Painkillers dulled the edge, but the silence was sharper. No balloons, no familiar perfume, no anxious voice calling my name. There was a nurse, older, quiet. She checked my chart, adjusted something on the IV, and I asked her, hoarse, "Was anyone here?" She hesitated, pen hovering mid-air. "There was a woman," she said eventually, eyes flicking away from mine. Didn't stay long. A few hours later, I heard it again, from the family in the next bed, whispering like I wasn't just behind a curtain. "She's that girl. You know, the one whose mom left her in the street." That stuck harder than the metal rods they put in my leg. And yet, as lonely as those days were, someone showed up. Odessa Tillman. She lived 3 doors down from us. I'd only spoken to her in passing before, the occasional wave, the short exchange when I helped carry her groceries up the porch steps. But there she was, sitting at the foot of my bed with a Tupperware of homemade soup, chicken and rice, no words, no explanations, just soup and presence. She didn't ask what happened, didn't pry, she just stayed. She read her newspaper in silence, knitted something green and soft, and when the nurse came in to check my vitals, Odessa stepped outside like she belonged there. That night, I cried. Not from the pain, but from that realization. Love doesn't always come from the people who are supposed to give it. And sometimes, strangers do the job family won't. Over the next few weeks, Odessa became my constant. Corinne never returned, not once, but Odessa came every other day, and when I was discharged, she helped me get home, set up my room, and even brought a mini whiteboard to help me track my meds. I never asked her why she did it. She never explained. And maybe that was the point. 17 years later, lying in bed that night, I watched the shadows flicker across the ceiling of my apartment. The city outside hummed with late-night traffic, the occasional siren echoing in the distance, but my mind was stuck on 3 seconds. She saw me, she saw me, she saw me, and she walked away. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. Through the peephole, I saw her, leaning casually against the frame like she'd dropped by to borrow sugar. Her hair was streaked with gray, styled too perfectly for someone claiming to be just passing through. The scarf around her neck was the same deep wine color she wore the day she walked away. She didn't knock again, just stood there, calm, like she had every right to be on my threshold. I waited. Maybe she'd get bored. Maybe she'd remember what she did and feel ashamed enough to leave. But Corinne Lawley didn't do shame. Eventually, I heard the soft rustle of paper sliding under my door. A pause. Then footsteps, heels tapping too slowly for someone in a hurry. I counted 5 seconds after the last click of her shoes before bending down to pick up what she'd left behind. A manila envelope. No name, no note. Just the seal, neat and deliberate. I opened it with more curiosity than caution, expecting, what? An apology? A letter filled with motherly regret? A photo of us from back when I still thought mom meant something more than biology? No. Inside was a document, legally formatted, stamped, highlighted. Affidavit of reconciliation. I scanned the first paragraph and stopped cold. Party A acknowledges that Party B, Corinne Lawley, has consistently maintained a maternal presence, demonstrated appropriate care, and wishes to restore their familial relationship in good faith. I almost laughed. Not a single mention of abandonment. No accountability, just a tidy piece of legal fiction. I left the envelope on the counter, made myself tea, and sat on the couch without turning on any lights. The hum of the fridge filled the quiet. The bitter taste of Earl Grey was the only thing grounding me. She wanted my signature. She wanted me to say, on paper for the record, that she had been a good mother. That her presence was steady, supportive, and real. It wasn't just about me. This was for something, a legal move, a setup. There was no attempt at a relationship, just a transaction, a signature to unlock something I didn't yet understand. The next morning, I sat on the edge of my bed with the envelope in my hands. The paper smelled like the floral lotion Corinne always wore. She'd probably dabbed some on her wrists before coming here, thinking the scent might soften me up. It didn't. I tossed the envelope back onto the dresser and stared out the window. Funny how silence works. For years, I'd imagined what I would say if I ever saw her again. I'd written speeches in my head, some angry, some calm, some righteous. But when it actually happened, when she was just a few inches and one wooden door away, I said nothing. Because her arrival wasn't about making things right. It was about control. I took the rest of the day off work. Didn't call in, didn't explain. I just didn't show up. Instead, I dug out an old plastic bin from the closet. It was dusty and cracked along the edges, filled with things I didn't have the heart to throw away. Birthday cards, report cards, a photo of me in braces holding a participation ribbon, and the insurance form. It was creased, folded inside the back of a birthday card that read, "Love you always, Mom." The form was from the state, reimbursement for medical travel. Corinne had taken me to an eye appointment on my 16th birthday. I'd remembered that day as a rare moment of normalcy. She'd bought me lunch, smiled at me like we were actually okay for once. I used to think she was trying. But that form, filed the same day, stamped with her name, proved otherwise. It wasn't a birthday lunch. It was an errand, a way to claim mileage. I stared at the card again, the sloppy "love you always," now a punchline. That night, I sat in my kitchen and reread the affidavit. I traced the signature line with my fingertip and thought about what it would mean to sign, what I'd be erasing with one pen stroke. She wanted peace. That's what she said when she finally called. "I just want peace, Nia," she'd whispered into my voicemail. "We've both been through enough. Let's move on." Peace for who? For the woman who left her daughter in the street like an inconvenient errand gone wrong? Or for the woman who wanted her past scrubbed clean so she could gain something? I didn't call her back. Instead, I opened the top drawer of my desk and found the letters. Odessa's handwriting hadn't changed in the years I knew her. Sharp, clean, consistent. She'd left me a note after every holiday, every milestone. Some were short, others full pages. One of them, dated a few months before she passed, simply said, "Don't let ghosts wear human faces and call themselves family." I must have read that sentence 10 times before folding it up and placing it on my lap. Odessa never told me what she thought of Corinne, not directly, but in every act, in every quiet offering, she told me what love looked like, what it should look like. I spent the rest of the evening watching the sky change color, from soft orange to charcoal blue, until the streetlights buzzed on and the world outside dimmed. My phone lit up once. Corinne again. I let it ring. Later, I walked to the door and opened it. The hallway was empty, quiet. I leaned against the frame for a long minute, the envelope still in my hand. Then I called out, loud enough for the words to fill the space between us. "I'm not signing anything. Not yet." There was no reply, no footsteps, no echoes. But I knew she heard me. And this time, I wasn't the girl lying broken on the pavement. I was the woman standing on solid ground, demanding answers. The days that followed didn't scream danger. They whispered it. Corinne didn't pound on my door or leave dramatic voicemails. She didn't shout from street corners or make tearful phone calls to relatives. She was smarter than that, calculated, measured, and she had patience, the kind only guiltless people possess. I first noticed her the following Thursday. It had been a long day at work, back-to-back meetings, a report that wouldn't balance, and a tense conversation with a donor who thought nonprofit meant free labor. I walked out of the building around 6, tugging my cardigan tighter as the evening chill snuck in through the trees lining the sidewalk. And there she was, across the street, standing near the bus stop, holding a Trader Joe's bag like she'd just done some light grocery shopping, except it was nearly empty, and she wasn't looking at the schedule or her phone. She was looking at me. Her face didn't flinch when our eyes met. No wave, no nod, not even a twitch of recognition. Just that stare. Steady, sharp. I stopped walking, pulled out my phone, and took a picture. Not obviously, but clear enough. She saw me do it. Her mouth curled up slightly, as if I'd just passed her a silent compliment. I didn't confront her. I just walked away, heart pounding. That night, I logged the time and location in a folder I'd created on my laptop. I wasn't ready to admit it was stalking, not yet, but I was tired of trusting my memory alone, tired of second-guessing what I knew was real. The following week, it happened again. This time, I was coming out of the grocery store, arms full of paper bags, when I saw her near the magazine rack by the pharmacy counter. Different outfit, same scarf, same lipstick shade I remembered from childhood, a burnt orange that looked like rust in the wrong light. She wasn't shopping. She wasn't even pretending. She picked up a tabloid, flipped a page, and stared at me over the edge. I didn't break stride. I didn't speak. But inside, I started to build a wall, a fortress made of receipts, timestamps, photos, and facts. Odessa's voice echoed in my memory that night while I replayed the footage from my doorbell cam. She used to say, "Predators don't growl, baby. They smile." She was right. The third encounter came not in person, but in a padded envelope. It arrived at work, tucked neatly among donation letters and board updates. My name was written in cursive across the front, the kind that looked sweet if you didn't know better. Inside, a bouquet of artificial roses, silk petals dyed too bright to be real, and a folded card. The handwriting was the same. "You've always been the strong one. I'm so proud of you. Please sign the paper. Let's move forward, or I'll have no choice." That line, I read it 3 times, hoping it would change by the 4th. But it didn't. I showed the note to Esther, my colleague 2 desks over. She frowned, reread it, then looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. She mailed this here? To the office? I nodded. That's creepy, she muttered. You should tell HR, or the police, or both. I didn't do either. Not yet, because technically, Corinne hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't threatened to hurt me, not directly. She hadn't trespassed, not in any way the law would care about, but something had shifted. This wasn't a plea. It was pressure, soft and deliberate. I went home that evening and installed a second camera, this one angled toward the stairwell. I updated the firmware on my doorbell cam and changed the settings so it would alert me if anything moved within 10 feet of my door. Then I started a journal, digital, password protected. I wrote down every detail, date, time, location, description, emotional state, and whether or not there were witnesses. It wasn't for therapy, it was for proof. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Not to file anything yet, just to get ahead of whatever was coming. The woman I met with was smart, sharp, and wasted no time. This isn't about protecting yourself anymore, she told me, flipping through the images and notes I'd printed. It's about building a case. Don't engage. Don't reply. Just collect. I nodded. What if she escalates? She will, she said without blinking. People like her always do. Just make sure you're ready when she does. I was. The following Friday, I got home later than usual. Traffic had crawled for nearly an hour due to a wreck on the 215. It was dark when I pulled into the parking garage beneath my apartment. The air was still, almost too still for a building with 37 units. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. No real reason, just a gut feeling. When I reached my floor, I saw her. She was sitting on the steps just outside my unit, a paper grocery bag by her feet. She looked up like she'd been waiting all day, like this was a casual drop-by, not a violation. I didn't stop walking. Corinne, I said, calm and low. You can't be here. She stood, brushing off invisible lint from her coat. I brought you dinner, she said, lifting the bag. Chicken pot pie, the kind you used to love. You can't keep showing up like this. Her smile faltered. She stepped forward, slowly. I gave birth to you, she said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. Don't you dare treat me like a stranger. I didn't hesitate. You treated me like a stranger in the street, I said. That's where we began. That landed. She blinked, then clutched the paper bag a little tighter. All I'm asking for is your forgiveness. One signature. That's it. And we both get to move on. I stepped past her and unlocked my door, speaking without turning around. You already moved on 17 years ago when you pulled your cap down and walked away. I pushed the door open, but before I could step inside, her voice changed. It dropped into something colder, deeper. Sign it. I'm running out of patience. And once I do, you'll wish you had. I turned slowly. My phone was already recording from my coat pocket. Her tone, her words, everything was captured. I met her eyes and didn't blink. Tick, 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 I whispered. Then I closed the door behind me and double-locked it. That weekend, she called again. I didn't answer. The voicemail she left was clipped, polite, too polite. Just a quick visit, she said. Just 5 minutes. I'd really like you to see something. Her voice carried that tone, half sugar, half warning, like a trap wrapped in ribbon. I didn't respond right away, but something in me said, go. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just the part of me that still wanted to understand how a woman like Corinne could look at her own daughter on the pavement and keep walking. Sunday afternoon was warm, deceptively calm. I pulled into the street I used to bike down as a kid. The trees were taller now, older, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks. Her house, our old house, still had the same chipping paint, same flower bed out front that Odessa once helped me plant marigolds in. I rang the bell. She opened the door with that same manufactured smile, lips pulled tight over teeth she'd had whitened too many times. You came, she said, like she hadn't left 17 years of silence between us. 5 minutes, I reminded her, stepping inside. The air smelled like potpourri and lemon cleaner. Too clean, too staged. Everything looked smaller. The living room, the walls, even the ceiling. But it was the same couch, same rug, same coffee table I'd spilled juice on when I was 10. She gestured to the hallway. I updated the photo wall. I followed slowly, letting her lead, already knowing something was coming. And there it was, dead center in the hall, under a track light like it was sacred. The new family photo, same backdrop as the one we'd taken when I was 13. Fall leaves, matching sweaters, stiff smiles. Except in this one, I wasn't there. Same pose, same frame, same laugh frozen on Keen's face. But no trace of me. My spot was filled in with empty space. Cropped cleanly, surgically, I didn't say anything. She noticed. Corinne tilted her head slightly. "It's just a cleaner image," she said. "Less noise." Less noise. I took one last look at that photo and turned around. I didn't slam the door behind me, didn't speak, didn't ask why she thought I wouldn't notice. I just walked. Back in the car, my hands were steady, but my throat burned. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel, trying not to scream. Because I finally got it. I wasn't just ignored. I was erased, like I'd never existed. But ghosts remember. That evening, I got a call. Keen, my brother, same number, same voice I hadn't heard in years. "Nia," he said, like we were still close, like nothing had happened. "What do you want?" I asked. "She's trying," he said without hesitation. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond right away. "Keen," I said finally, "did she ever tell you what happened the day of the accident?" Silence. "You were in college then, right? You remember the call? You remember what she said?" More silence. I didn't press. I already knew the answer. If she told him anything, it was her version, polished, incomplete, convenient. "She's your mother," he said eventually. "She's not perfect, but she's trying." "No," I replied. "She's trying to rewrite the story. That's not the same." He sighed. "You've always been difficult." And that was that. After the call, I opened my laptop and started organizing everything. Every photo, email, note, video clip, voice message. I created folders, labeled them, backed them up to the cloud and a USB stick. I wasn't just collecting anymore. I was building something. A map, a history, a defense, a truth. I pulled out the manila envelope she'd left, the one with the legal form I'd nearly tossed in the trash. This time, I opened it. Really read it. Every word, every clause. Clause 7C. Party A agrees to refrain from any public or private statements that could be reasonably interpreted as defamatory to Party B. It wasn't about peace. It wasn't even about reconciliation. It was a muzzle, a gag order in the form of a signature. She didn't want my forgiveness. She wanted my silence. I stared at that line until it blurred. And then I slid the envelope into the shredder. The hum of the machine was almost soothing. Like the sound of something old finally being destroyed, something that never should have existed in the first place. After that, I picked up my phone and hit record. My voice, clear and even, filled the room. "My name is Nia Race. I am the daughter of Corinne Lawley. On October 12th, 17 years ago, I was struck by a car while crossing the street. My mother saw it happen. She looked at me, directly, and walked away." I paused, breathed, continued. "This is my story, and I will not be erased." I left the cafe that morning feeling strangely calm. Not at peace. Peace requires honesty, but clear. Corinne's warning still echoed in my ears like static. "Careful, Nia. You don't want to make me your enemy." But that was the problem, wasn't it? She already was. She just didn't like that I'd stopped playing the quiet daughter. It had started earlier that day when I opened the front door and nearly stepped on a small white box. No note, no name, just a lavender ribbon tied too tight around the corners. I picked it up, already knowing it wouldn't be innocent. Inside was a necklace. I recognized it instantly. It was a cheap silver locket, the kind you buy at drugstores for $9, shaped like a heart, tiny, worn. I hadn't seen it in over 20 years, but I remembered the weight of it around my neck like it was yesterday. I wore it almost every day in 5th grade, thinking it meant something. The note was stuck to the inside of the lid. Her handwriting, too neat to be casual, read, "See, I never stopped loving you." I sat on the floor in the kitchen and stared at it. For a while, I said nothing, just let the silence fill the room until it started to hurt. The memory came back not as a flash, but like a film reel rolling in the background of my mind. I remembered the day she gave me that necklace. I was 10. It was the day after a caseworker from Child Protective Services visited the house about a noise complaint from a neighbor. That same week, Corinne submitted a refund claim for a transportation stipend, gas mileage reimbursement for driving me to a free vision screening. I saw the paperwork years later, long after I stopped pretending it had been a birthday surprise. She didn't give me that necklace because she loved me. She gave it to remind the world she had. I put the locket back in the box and pushed it aside. That afternoon, I reopened the affidavit she had sent. I hadn't looked at it in over a week, but it was time to really read it, line by line, with the same kind of cold calculation she used to justify sending it. Clause 4. Party A acknowledges the consistent presence, support, and caregiving provided by Party B. Consistent presence. She hadn't called on my 16th birthday, or my high school graduation. She wasn't there when I got hit by that car. I bled in the street like roadkill while she walked away, adjusting her cap like I was some mess she didn't want to be seen cleaning up. This wasn't reconciliation. It was a rewrite. That evening, I sent her a text. "Let's talk, tomorrow, Café Clementine, 9 a.m. The message was read instantly. No reply, but I knew she'd show, and she did. The cafe was half full, moms with strollers, older couples splitting muffins, a man in the corner with earbuds, and a dog curled at his feet. I picked a table near the front. Enough noise to hide a conversation, but not enough to cover one if it got ugly. Corinne arrived in a camel coat, hair done, lipstick darker than usual. She looked like she was walking into a job interview, or court. She didn't sit right away. She stood over the table and smiled that same polished smile she wore like armor. "I'm glad you came," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I didn't smile. Didn't offer small talk, just reached into my coat pocket and placed the box with the necklace on the table between us. Her eyes flicked down to it. She didn't touch it. "That was meant to be a peace offering," she said quietly. "No," I said. "It was a prop." She stiffened but didn't argue. "I didn't bring the document," I added. Corinne exhaled, long and dramatic. "Nia, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry," I interrupted. "I'm done being erased." She looked around the cafe like someone might overhear, then leaned in slightly. "You don't have to make this public." "I'm not the one making this public," I said. "You are. You're the one trying to clean your slate before someone else writes your story for you." Corinne's voice flattened. "This is about closure. This is about control." She didn't deny it. "So," I continued, keeping my tone steady, "you want me to sign a document that says you were always there, that you supported me, that you were a loving mother." She nodded slowly. "For family, for peace." "No," I said. "For $250,000. Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is about money?" "It is about money," I said. "Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't care if I signed anything. You wouldn't have sent a necklace with a sticky note pretending it was love." Corinne's lips pressed together. "People change, Nia." "No. People reveal themselves," I said. "You revealed yourself a long time ago. I was just too young to name it." The table next to us had gone quiet. A woman 2 seats over was pretending to scroll her phone but kept glancing up. Corinne noticed too. She leaned in closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You're making a scene." "No," I said louder. "You are. You're the one who wants me to lie, who wants the world to think you were something you never were." "Nia, keep going," I said, sitting back in my chair. "Let them hear what family means to you." Corinne's eyes flared. For the first time in years, I saw her without the mask, just a woman cornered by her own reflection. She grabbed her purse, then paused and looked up. "Careful, Nia," she said, her voice low and cutting. "You don't want to make me your enemy." I took the last sip of my coffee, stood up, and tucked my phone, still recording, back into my coat pocket. "You did that 17 years ago," I said. "I'm just now responding." I walked out, but before I reached the door, I turned around just once to see her sitting there, still holding the necklace box like it might explode. She had no idea that it already had. By the time I reached the bottom of the courthouse steps, I could feel the shift. Not in the air, not in the people passing by, but inside me. It was subtle, like a thread finally snapping loose. I didn't realize I'd been holding that tension so long until I wasn't. That evening, I sat on my couch with a warm mug of tea, scrolling through emails on my phone. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just letting the day settle. Then one message caught my eye. It had been forwarded by a former coworker from my first nonprofit job. Subject line, FYI, local gossip thread. It wasn't curiosity that made me open it, it was instinct. And there it was, a post from a concerned community member on a neighborhood moms forum. "Some of you may know my daughter, Nia. She's been spreading harmful lies about her upbringing in order to gain sympathy and manipulate public opinion. It's truly sad to see someone fabricate trauma when the truth is far less dramatic. Estranged children often rewrite history." No name attached to the account, but the phrasing was unmistakably Corinne's. I knew her cadence. I knew the way she weaponized civility. It was her version of a slap to the face, clean, composed, and just vague enough to avoid legal consequence. I read it twice, not because I was shocked, but because I wanted to absorb just how far she was willing to go to protect her fiction. And then the firestorm began. By morning, the post had been shared to 3 other local message boards. Another followed, quoting unnamed family sources about my supposed history of mental instability. One post even implied I'd threatened my mother in the past. The comments were a mix of pity and side eyes. "She's always had issues. Some kids just can't let go. Sounds like someone needs therapy, not a podium." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I printed every single page, highlighted names, dates, phrasing. I bookmarked links, archived screenshots, cross-checked timestamps. At 3:14 p.m., I walked into my lawyer's office with a flash drive and a folder thick with paper. She skimmed the contents for 10 minutes, then leaned back in her chair, face unreadable. "This isn't defamation yet," she said. "But we're on the edge. Keep documenting everything." I nodded. "But you should also prepare for escalation," she added. "What does escalation look like?" I asked. Her reply was simple. "When public manipulation doesn't work, they'll make it personal." That didn't take long. The following Tuesday started like any other. Morning meeting, a lunch and learn with 2 new interns, a quick walk to the local coffee truck for a much-needed iced latte. At 2:07 p.m., a security guard knocked on my office door. "Miss Race, there's someone outside asking for you. Older woman. She said she's your mother. Said she doesn't feel well." I stood too fast. My window faced the street. I rushed to it, pulled the blinds open, and there she was. Corinne was sprawled on the ground at the base of our building's front steps, one hand clutching her chest, the other resting dramatically on her forehead. A paper bag tipped beside her with oranges rolling onto the pavement. Her coat slightly disheveled. Someone had already called 911. And then she looked up, just for a second, but long enough for me to catch it. She wasn't grimacing in pain. She wasn't panicking. She was checking her reflection in the storefront glass next to her, straightening her collar, adjusting her hair. And then, when she saw 2 people running toward her, she let her head fall back as if she were losing consciousness. I didn't go down there. I didn't call out. I didn't rush to her side. I recorded, through the window. Clear, steady footage, no edits, just truth. By 3:30, I had uploaded the clip anonymously to the same mom's forum where she had dragged my name. The caption was short. "This is what manipulation looks like." Within hours, her defenders began to retreat. Posts were deleted, threads locked. One of her old friends, a woman who once called me selfish for cutting ties, sent me a private message. I didn't know, it read. I'm sorry. It wasn't justice, but it was something. Corinne, of course, had her own version. She claimed she had a dizzy spell, that she came to see me because she was worried, that the oranges were a peace offering. She told that story to anyone who would listen. But the video did its job. I didn't reply to any of it. I didn't have to. The next morning, a text came from my lawyer. We're past the line. Let's go beyond documentation. You're ready to file. I sat in my kitchen, that quiet hour between dawn and noise, and stared at those words. Ready. Not vengeful. Not even angry anymore. Just ready. I reached for my phone, opened my folder of footage, and dropped it into an encrypted drive. I changed into slacks and a soft blue blouse, pulled my hair back, and tucked the USB into my coat pocket. On the walk to the courthouse, I passed by a woman helping her mother out of a parked car. They were arguing about something, shoes, I think. The daughter rolled her eyes. The mother wagged her finger. But there was love there. Irritation, yes, but real love. I could see it in the way the daughter steadied her mother's elbow without thinking. It didn't hurt to see anymore. It used to. But now, it was just separate. I didn't come from that. But I would build something better. I reached the courthouse steps and paused. Took a deep breath. The USB in my pocket felt heavier than it was. Let's make it official, I whispered, and I walked inside. I arrived 15 minutes early. Riverside Park was quiet that evening. Not empty. There were dog walkers, a couple of kids riding scooters down the path, but it was the kind of weekday hush that let you hear the wind rustle through trees. I chose the bench near the playground, not for the symbolism, but for the lighting. Good visibility, clear sightlines, one entrance path. I wore jeans, a dark sweater, and a small crossbody bag. In that bag was a lapel mic, wired to my phone. The recorder app had been running since I left the house. Every step, every breath, documented. Odessa's friend, Dr. Meredith Hall, had agreed to meet here too. She wasn't a close friend, but she'd worked with Odessa at the clinic before they both retired. Meredith remembered the day of my accident. Not just remembered, she was there. She sat on a bench farther down, pretending to read a newspaper. Her white hair was pinned up. Sunglasses shaded her eyes. She looked harmless, observant, just like Odessa used to. At 6:08 p.m., Corinne appeared. She approached with that same purposeful walk I knew too well, measured, polished, as though the pavement beneath her feet belonged to her. She wore a navy blue trench coat, pearl earrings, and that expression she'd perfected. Warm, generous, performative. "Nia," she said brightly, "you look good. I always knew you'd turn out fine." I didn't answer. I didn't smile. I scooted over slightly so she could sit, but I didn't make it welcoming. "Let's skip the frosting," I said. "Why are we here?" She sighed as if I'd ruined a perfectly pleasant start. "I'm trying to fix things," she said, "but you're making it impossible." I let that hang in the air. She was baiting me. I knew the game, and I wasn't playing. Corinne reached into her purse and pulled out a new envelope, this one with an embossed gold seal. "This is just a clarification version," she said, placing it between us. "Cleaner language, simpler terms. We only need to show that we've reconnected. The rest is just words." I didn't touch the envelope. "What changed?" I asked. She blinked. "What do you mean? Why now? Why not 5 years ago? 10? Why is it so urgent?" She hesitated for the first time. "My mother passed 2 months ago," she said finally. "She left an estate. Some of it is locked. Conditional clauses, legal nonsense. They need proof I've reconciled with both of my children. I tried with Keen. He's on board." Of course he was. "And you need me to validate that fiction," I said. Corinne's smile faltered. "I just need you to say we're good," she said. "One signature, one lie. You're good at lying, aren't you?" I turned slowly toward her. "Is that how you remember the accident too?" Her face changed. "I was there," she snapped. "I wanted to help. But a nurse, someone, told me to back off. You don't remember, right? You were in shock." "I remember," I said. I remember the color of your hat. I remember you pulling it down over your face and walking away. I didn't walk away. Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. That's not what happened. You've poisoned yourself with this story, convinced yourself I'm a monster. I was terrified, Nia. I didn't know what to do. I thought someone else had it under control. Dr. Meredith stood up then, calm, smooth. She walked toward us like someone stretching her legs, folding the newspaper neatly in her hand. Corinne noticed her before she spoke. Actually, Meredith said, her voice even, I was there. I was 10 feet behind you that day. Corinne's mouth opened, closed. You looked her in the eye, Meredith continued, and you turned around. You didn't run. You didn't scream. You looked around, pulled your hat lower, and walked the other way. I remember because I was the one who stayed until the ambulance came. I didn't need to look at Corinne's face to know it was unraveling. That's the truth I'll be signing, I said quietly, meeting Meredith's eyes. Corinne stood up, fists clenched, lips trembling. You set me up, she hissed. No, I said, rising too. I gave you a chance. 2 uniformed officers walked up the path, 1 male, 1 female. They'd been briefed, knew who to look for. Corinne Lawley? The female officer asked. You're being served for violation of a restraining order and are under investigation for harassment. This is a mistake, Corinne said, voice too loud. She's manipulating everything. You don't know what she's capable of. I handed over a flash drive, voice recordings, footage, documents, copies of the affidavit, the smear campaign screenshots. She's been warned, I said simply. Corinne tried to step back, but the male officer gently took her arm. Please don't resist, ma'am. The park had gone quiet. A jogger slowed to watch. A woman walking her dog paused, earbuds out. And then the sound, click, of handcuffs sliding into place. You'll regret this, Corinne screamed. I didn't flinch. I turned and walked. Meredith followed a few steps behind me. When we reached the end of the path, I paused. Just once. I didn't look back, but I said it anyway. You taught me to survive, I said. Just never thought it would be from you. The next morning, the sky over Riverside was soft gray, the kind that promised rain without fully committing. I sat on the bench by the library, Odessa's bench, the one near the rose bushes that always bloomed too early in spring. It had been 3 days since Corinne's arrest, and though the world had moved on, people commuting, sipping coffee, complaining about traffic, I sat still. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt emptied, like I had run a marathon barefoot and uphill. And now that it was done, I wasn't sure where to go next. The wooden slats beneath me creaked when I shifted. I pulled a small envelope from my coat pocket, the edges frayed from time. I wasn't planning to read it today, but something in the air, in the weight of quiet around me, told me it was time. Before I could open it, a voice broke my thoughts. Excuse me, are you Nia Race? I looked up. A young woman stood in front of me, no older than 25, holding a notepad and a phone. Her hair was in a messy bun, glasses slipping down her nose. I'm Julia, from the Riverside Voice. I saw your name in the court log last week. What happened? Well, it struck me. Would you consider talking to me? Sharing your side? I studied her for a moment. She didn't have the smugness of a gossip chaser. She looked nervous, too green to manipulate me, but also too eager for me to ignore. I'm not interested in making this a spectacle, I said. She nodded quickly. It's not that. Stories like yours matter, but only if they're told right. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and handed her a sealed envelope. What's this? She asked. Something to read, I said. That's the only version I want out there. She accepted it like it was made of glass, thanked me softly, then walked away. When she disappeared behind the hedges, I turned back to the other envelope, the one Odessa left behind. She'd tucked it into a baking tin after her diagnosis. I found it a few days after her funeral, hidden between her recipe cards and a coupon for cinnamon sticks she never used. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Naya, some people give you life, others give you reason to keep living it. You don't owe anyone an explanation for surviving. You've always been worth loving. You don't need to prove it anymore. When your voice shakes, speak anyway. When your hands tremble, write anyway. And when the world tells you to sit still, take one step forward, always. Oh, by the time I finished reading, I wasn't just crying. I was sobbing. Not the kind of tears that fall in private, neat, and quiet. These were deep, shaking, hiccuping sobs, the kind that make your ribs ache, that drag something out of you didn't know you were still carrying. It wasn't about Corinne, not anymore. It was about Odessa, about the woman who stepped in quietly when the one who should have stayed didn't. I stayed on that bench for over an hour. By the end of the week, Corinne's case had made the local news. A short segment on Channel 8. Restraining order leads to harassment charges in inheritance battle. They didn't say my name, but they didn't have to. People knew. The court documents were public. One neighbor left a basket of muffins on my porch with no note. Another crossed the street when I walked past. Some of Corinne's former friends vanished from social media, their silence louder than any apology. I didn't feel smug, or petty, or angry. This wasn't revenge, I told my therapist during our first session. It was self-rescue. She nodded like she understood more than I was saying. I didn't go to court for the final hearing. My lawyer went in my place. I already knew what the outcome would be. The evidence was clear, the truth even clearer. Instead, I spent that day at my office, surrounded by boxes of donated clothing and a group of volunteers sorting winter coats. Our nonprofit served women and children leaving abusive homes. It had always mattered to me, but now it pulsed through me like blood. Later that month, I reopened the draft I'd started writing years ago. My version, my story. I stopped halfway through the first paragraph, deleted it, and started fresh. Not for the courts, not for Corinne. For me. The words came slower now, but steadier. I wrote about the intersection, the 3 seconds, the silence that followed, and the sound of Odessa's footsteps, soft and certain, returning again and again until I could stand on my own. That night, I pulled out a photo album from my closet, the one with Odessa in the center, holding my hand at my college graduation. No biological ties, just the strongest bond I've ever known. I touched the corner of the photo gently, then closed the album. As I got ready for bed, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Unknown number. I pressed play. Hi, Miss Race. This is Andrea from Valley Women's Shelter. One of our girls here heard you speak a few years ago. We were wondering, would you be willing to come talk again? The women here could use someone like you. I stared at the ceiling for a moment, letting the request settle. And then I smiled. Not because I needed to be heard, but because I finally had something worth saying. The sun was just beginning to set as I crossed the street at Belmont and Ridgeway. It wasn't the exact intersection from that day 17 years ago, but it mirrored it in enough ways to make my stomach pull tight. The faded crosswalk, the same kind of rust-colored leaves scattered along the curb. A little girl was holding her mother's hand as they stepped off the sidewalk, the mother gently tugging her back when a cyclist sped past without warning. It was a small moment, barely noticeable to anyone else, but it caught me, froze me, just for a breath. I watched as the mother looked down, smiled at her daughter, and said something I couldn't hear. The girl giggled. They moved on, and so did I. That image, tender as it was, didn't hurt like it once would have. I let the feeling come, acknowledged the ache, and kept walking. The memory no longer controlled me. It was just a shadow, present, but not overwhelming. Back home, I placed my keys in the bowl near the door and kicked off my shoes. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt earned, peaceful, not hollow. Later that night, I opened my laptop and scanned a few headlines. There it was, just beneath the fold. Local woman accepts plea deal in harassment case. The article was short and to the point. Community service, probation, a court-ordered public apology. Her name, now permanently attached to a searchable record, no mugshot, no jail time. But she didn't get what she wanted. Keene hadn't called. He probably wouldn't. I'd stopped expecting anything from him a long time ago. For someone so obsessed with keeping up appearances, his silence was just another calculated move. If you don't pick a side, you don't risk being on the wrong one. He'd always preferred the middle, I used to envy that. Now, I pitied it. The following weekend, I spoke at a local women's shelter. It wasn't a planned event. They'd reached out after hearing what had happened, asking if I'd be willing to speak about boundaries, family dynamics, anything that might resonate with the women they served. I didn't prepare notes. I didn't bring a speech. I just stood in front of 30 strangers and told the truth, not the legal version, not the polite version, the real one. I used to think blood meant loyalty, I said. I thought being born into someone's life guaranteed they'd stay in yours, that they'd protect you, even when it's inconvenient. But sometimes the people who give you life don't know how to love you, and that's not your fault. No names, no specifics, but the truth hung in the room like mist. One woman in the front row wiped her eyes, another nodded slowly, both hands clutching her purse like a life raft. When I finished, no one clapped. There wasn't supposed to be applause. There was just silence, and in that silence, something sacred passed between us. Recognition. Relief. A quiet kind of courage. Several women came up afterward. Some just hugged me, others whispered their stories. Mothers who'd turned their backs, siblings who'd gaslit them for decades, spouses who called love a favor. They didn't ask me for solutions. They just needed to know they weren't alone. That night, I visited Odessa's grave. It was tucked in the corner of the cemetery, near a line of sycamore trees that always caught the wind just right. I brought a photo from the shelter event, me standing at the front, women listening, some nodding, others smiling through tears. I placed it against her headstone, weighted down with a smooth river stone. "We made it," I whispered. I knelt and pressed a sunflower into the soft earth. Her favorite. As I stood to leave, I noticed the silence around me. Not empty, but full. Full of every word Odessa ever said without saying it out loud. Full of every quiet act of love. The casseroles. The letters. The way she always showed up and never demanded anything in return. The next few days passed gently. I got back to my routine, work, grocery runs, folding laundry while the news played softly in the background. I started sleeping better. Not deeply, not without dreams, but better. Some nights I still hear the tires. That screech, the one from the moment before impact, it hasn't vanished. I don't expect it to. It's part of the architecture now, part of how I understand the world. But it doesn't paralyze me anymore. I let it come, I acknowledge it, and I move on. One afternoon, while walking through a vintage shop with a friend, I saw it. A gray baseball cap, nearly identical to the one Corinne wore the day she left me on that street. I picked it up, held it in my hands for a moment, the fabric soft and worn from time. I stared at it like it might speak, but it didn't. And I realized I didn't need it to. I set it back on the shelf. No dramatics, no tears. Just release. As we walked out of the shop, the air felt lighter. A breeze tugged at my jacket, playful. I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because something in me had shifted. I didn't need closure. I had freedom. You don't have to forgive someone to free yourself from them. Sometimes you just set the weight down and keep walking. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. This story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the truth when everyone else tried to bury it. Not all wounds bleed. Some are silent, passed down like heirlooms, until someone chooses to break the cycle. Have you ever had to choose peace over family? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, emotional, and unforgettable family stories.